Hi there everyone. Today's reflection is on Mark chapter 12, verses 28 to 34. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," answered Jesus, "is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbour as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." "Well said, teacher," the man replied. "You are right in saying that God is one and there is no other but him. To love him with all your heart, with all your understanding and with all your strength, and to love your neighbour as yourself is more important than all the burnt offerings and sacrifices." When Jesus saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." And from then on, no one dared ask him any more questions. Politicians these days seem to live in fear of what they call the gotcha question. In other words, a question from a journalist that's designed to corner them, leave them trying to defend the seemingly indefensible. Some politicians, of course, respond better to gotcha questions than others. Some have the guts to admit that sometimes positions do change and that apologies are not a sign of weakness. In contrast, some fumble around, desperately looking for the exit door. Others dodge the question entirely, falling back on the pre-scripted sound bites they've been given for the day. There are some, of course, that don't seem to care at all, believing that the truth is whatever they want it to be. Jesus, of course, was no politician, but he was nevertheless a huge threat to the establishment. Only a few days earlier, he'd arrived in Jerusalem to massive acclaim, cheered on by expectant crowds who were crying out for change and believed that Jesus was the man to deliver it. As a result, there was no shortage of people in high places who wanted Jesus publicly discredited, or better still, dead. And so, as we've been hearing in our readings this week, Jesus finds himself facing a barrage of gotcha questions from the Pharisees and the Sadducees, amongst others. Each of them desperate to entrap him, to force him into an answer that will bring him down. But he answers those questions skillfully and sincerely. But he now faces the teachers of the law who pose a difficult and a dangerous question. Of all the commandments, they ask him, which is the most important? Now, it's worth bearing in mind at this point that the Jewish teachers of the law considered there to be over 600 religious laws that needed to be obeyed. Pick one, they seem to be saying, and then we'll tell you why you're wrong. Why your answer means that you, a son of a carpenter, know nothing compared to us. Why your answer shows that in fact, you're just a charlatan, a heretic. But the answer that Jesus gives is simplicity itself. To love the Lord your God with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. But he doesn't stop there. The second greatest commandment, he says, is to love your neighbour as yourself. You're right, says the teacher. The two commandments chosen by Jesus focus on very different things. The first is focused on our relationship with God. The second is focused on our relationship with others. But the two are inextricably linked. In other words, what Jesus is telling us that is an insular focus on our own faith is not enough. Faith is also about action, about how we treat others. A call for us to break down barriers and help other people, no matter what their race, their beliefs, or their sexuality. A reminder as we see the outpouring of anger this week following the murder of George Floyd in the US, that every life matters. That our duty as Christians goes beyond sending thoughts and prayers, it requires action as well. Faith is a complex thing. In some respects, that's what may draw us to it. A search for meaning and purpose in a world that seems to be spiralling out of control. But we can also overcomplicate faith. We can agonise over what Christianity means to us, how we should live our lives as Christians. We can wrestle with questions to which there is no answer. But what this passage also reminds us is that faith can be and should be simple. What God requires of us is to love him with all our heart, with all our mind, and with all our strength. And not only that we must love our neighbours as ourselves. That's it, in a nutshell. It's not easy, of course, and there are times when we will fail. But if we start each day with those two things in mind, and we really focus on them when we're living our daily lives, then we can't go far wrong.